Let's talk about chicken tikka masala, a dish that is unequivocally Indian, right? Wrong. What if I were to tell you that chicken tikka masala is to Indian food what General Tso's chicken is to Chinese food? It's not a recipe somebody's Grammy passed down, right? It's something engineered, in this case by South Asian immigrants in the United Kingdom. People who took their 1,000-year-old cooking traditions and created something new to survive in their new home. So this is the story of one of Earth's most famous dishes, and believe me when I say it's nuts. But not as nuts as how tasty the chicken tikka masala that we're going to make later is. Well, maybe, I don't know, I'll let you be the judge of that. The full story of how Britain and the East India Company ended up running the Indian subcontinent for hundreds of years deserves its own video. So does the origin of curry itself, which conveniently we already talked about. So you can go ahead and peep that if it tickles your biscuits. I'll leave a link somewhere. Now, the matter at hand, chicken tikka masala, or CTM as it's so cheekily referred. And no, that's not me being annoying and abbreviating everything into oblivion for the sake of bad comedy, right? It's a real thing. Now, the actual name of this dish is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting in the next 5 minutes, so let's get a quick little vocab recap. In Hindi and Urdu, tikka basically means a boneless piece, morsel, or chunk of meat. Usually the meat's going to be marinated in yogurt and spices, then skewered and cooked over hot coals in a clay oven called a tandoor. That right there, the skewer situation, that's chicken tikka. It's its own dish. And supposedly it dates back to the 1500s when a Mughal emperor was so terrified of choking on bones that he ordered his cooks to debone his meat for him.
Wait a minute!
So chicken tikka is itself a complete dish. You eat it with onions, maybe a little chutney. Really, it's kind of almost like a kebab. Now, masala means spice mix. When used in a dish's name, it usually refers to a spiced sauce made from said masala that's been bloomed in fat, maybe cooked down with some aromatics like tomatoes, onion, garlic, etc. So chicken tikka masala literally means chicken chunks in a spiced sauce, more or less. The funny thing here is that early on, a lot of these South Asian chefs working in British curry houses in the UK found doing this slightly insane because it wasn't so popular where they came from, right? I interpret it as sort of, I don't know, maybe the equivalent of making like a beautiful ribeye and then drowning the whole thing in clam chowder. That's more or less kind of the energy of how these people felt cooking the food of their home, but framing it for British tastes. Drowning meat in gravy is a very British thing to do. Matter of fact, there's a whole sub-cuisine that we're going to talk about later that almost exclusively features different gravies.
You just can't beat it.
Okay, so we've already covered a doctor's obsession with beef, Italy's favorite pasta having Arab roots, and the California roll actually coming from Canada. But the story of chicken tikka masala might be the most shocking yet. A real M. Night Shyamalan twist, except this won't leave you feeling as annoyed as his films do, respectfully. Still thinking about the ending of The Village when I was like 10 years old, it still scarred me because it sucked so bad. The story of chicken tikka masala starts on one fateful evening in a curry house called Shish Mahal in 1970s Glasgow, Scotland. By the way, curry house is kind of just a blanket term for a British restaurant serving Indian, Bangladeshi, or Pakistani style food. Now, the owner of this spot was a Pakistani dude named Ali Ahmed Aslam, who everybody called Mr. Ali, which is kind of sick. Now, late one night, an off-duty bus driver walks into his spot and orders regular good old chicken tikka. Remember, those are just the skewers that we talked about, only to send it back to the kitchen because it was too dry, right?
It's opinions based.
Because in Britain, meat is supposed to be served with a side of gravy. So in a panic, Mr. Ali walks to the back of his kitchen, grabs a can of Campbell's condensed tomato soup, tosses in some cream, throws in some spices, and then ladles the whole thing over the chicken tikka. He drops the plate in front of the grumpy bus driver, and really the dude loses his mind in a good way. The story goes he came back the next night with a bunch of buddies. Later on, those buddies would bring more friends, and you know, you get it. The rest is history. This is what successful hospitality looked like in a pre-Yelp existence. Man, I'm a chop dunk. And within a decade, our dish had a name, chicken tikka masala. And what was invented kind of completely on the fly by accident in the back of a curry house in Scotland, it would go on to become one of the most popular dishes in the whole of Britain, and dare I say, the planet. In 2001, a foreign secretary of the UK stands at a podium in London, where he calls chicken tikka masala a true British national dish. Needless to say, he took some heat for that one. Then in 2009, a Glasgow MP, that's a member of the parliament for my fellow Americans out there, he tries to get the European Union to legally protect the city as its official birthplace, which would sort of be the same status that they give places like Champagne in France or Parma ham in Italy or Greek feta. That is just how seriously Britain takes this dish and its incredible story. And the thing is, almost none of it is true. In the mid-1990s, a London restaurateur named Iqbal Wahab, forgive me for mispronouncing that, launched a trade magazine for the British curry industry. He needed publicity for his new venture, so he would sit down with a friend of his who just so happened to be a food historian. They hang out, they end up cracking a few bottles of vino, and boom. They invent the bus driver, they invent the chicken, they invent the can of Campbell's tomato soup. The whole thing, the whole nine. Liars. Soon after, these dudes would go on to feed this fabricated legend to journalists who just completely ate it up. Hilariously, the bus driver story goes global. It ends up in documentaries, newspapers, and is even featured in a New York Times obituary when Mr. Ali sadly passes away in 2022. Now, Iqbal, remember, the co-creator of this delicious lie, eventually comes clean, which really makes you wonder how much of history is just completely made up by some guy, right? The thing is, just like every other famous dish, there isn't one recipe for chicken tikka masala. Matter of fact, a 1960s cookbook from a Delhi-based author published 3 years before Shish Mahal even opened contains a recipe that food historians really do point to is essentially the prototype for chicken tikka masala, which, you guessed it, was murg makhani, aka butter chicken. Now here's what actually happened. The Indian restaurants that Britain is so known for, roughly 8 out of 10 of them are owned and run by people of Bangladeshi descent, most of them from a small region in Bangladesh called Sylhet. These people are often credited in building the entire British curry house industry, and the truly amazing part is that they invented many of the dish we Westerners might think of as authentic Indian food. But what they invented wasn't really Indian food at all. It was kind of entirely its own thing. Now, British food writers have a name for this: British Indian restaurant cooking, or BIR, or beer. The defining technique of beer, as we're gonna call it, is a base gravy, which is really just a giant pot of mildly spiced sauce that simmers in the back of the kitchen all day, right? And with that one base sauce, you can make dozens of different dishes. As one Bangladeshi restaurateur put it, you can't find this curry in Bangladesh or India. Curry is a part of British heritage. Remember, curry is a complicated word and it really doesn't exist in India or the, the bordering countries. Chicken tikka masala has been so successful, so globally famous that over the last 20 years, it's been reimported back to India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh as a menu item because tourists kept asking for it. So the British dish, born of South Asian ingredients, reshaped by Bangladeshi chefs in the UK, has now traveled home to a continent that didn't invent it in the first place. And while you might be able to order a CTM in Mumbai nowadays, it'll be labeled on the menu as a foreign dish. Chicken tikka masala is what happens when 5,000 years of South Asian cooking, a century of British empire, and one absolute legend of a PR hoax all land on the same plate. The good news is that you don't need to go to the UK or Mumbai to have yourself a decent bowl of CTM. No. You can make a very solid, delicious version in the comfort of your very own flat. Let me show you. First thing with chicken tikka masala is the chicken tikka, right? The skewers, which is what we're doing here. I just wanted to lay things out before we got going. Neutral oil, you know that one. Lemon juice, you know that one. This is a Indian style whole milk Greek yogurt. Now, I'm not really entirely sure what Indian style means, but it is whole milk yogurt. So you can just, use that. If you have 2% too, whatever it is. I prefer the whole milk. We like fat is flavor. Then we have our spice mix here. There's masala within this masala, all right? We got black pepper, coriander, cumin, turmeric, Kashmiri chili, garam masala. And though the world of spice mixes in Indian and South Asian cooking is intense and extreme, and it usually calls for a lot of specific spices, I will do my best to give you guys links to get these spices online if you don't have access to a good Indian market or something like that. Of course, good old salt. Then for this, it's important we use chicken thighs. Remember, fat is flavor. Chicken thighs, better than chicken breasts. And what you need for chicken tikka masala, especially if you wanted to stay juicy. This is ginger garlic paste, all right? I pretty much never, ever have jarred ginger or garlic in my fridge, right? That's no judgment. A lot of people don't want to spend the time cutting up their garlic and ginger. I get it. I think the fresh stuff is like supremely better, and it took me a long time to come around to this. Now, if you're doing a lot of Indian cooking, it often calls for ginger and garlic paste. Keyword paste. Not minced ginger, not minced garlic. Is it the most fresh, delicious ginger and garlic? No. It's, it's coming out of a jar. I do prefer it for a lot of this style of cooking, and it's just a nifty ingredient, man. You can throw it in so many things. But yeah, I'm talking too much. We basically just have to add this all to our chicken and get skewering. To our lovely bowl of chopped up and chunkatized chicken tikka, we're gonna go in with our lemon juice, ginger garlic paste, a little bit of neutral oil, a good glob of gurt, a healthy pinch of kosher, maybe 2, and of course, our lovely spice mix. And it should just go gloriously kind of like reddish orange. You guys know how marination works. To do this right, we gotta let this sit in the fridge for at least a few hours, better yet overnight, maybe even 2 days, right? We want these flavors to melt, so put it in the fridge, be patient, it will taste a lot better. Looky for us, I made some yesterday. Whew, the smell on this right after opening that lid is wild. All right, so we're gonna be cooking on the grill over super hot fire, quite literally. So to do that, I recommend using these metal skewers. For this type of thing, I like using the smaller or the medium-sized circular skewers, not to be confused with the larger, more sword-like skewers, which can also definitely work, but yeah, these are a little more manageable. I'll leave some links below if you wanna pick some of these up. They're super nifty. Otherwise, you can totally use the disposable wooden johns, but you know, just don't be surprised if they burn you faster than the girl you finally mustered up the courage to ask to the homecoming dance, which has never happened to me one time. All right, we're marinated, skewered up. Let's grill these tikkas. Okay, so I really do recommend using high heat for this. If you got them, use charcoal, otherwise gas grill is gonna work fine. We're just looking for that char, right? And unfortunately, I don't have a tandoor oven yet. But, you know, we just make sure to get them charry is the moral of the story here. Can you do this under the broiler in the oven in your crib? Absolutely. No shame in the game, except it's not going to be as smoky. It's just not as good. So if you got a grill, use it. But if it's the dead of winter and or you're just really lazy, you know, do you. Blackening around the edges for that real smoky grilled flavor is what we want. I'm more concerned about these having char on them and some color than finishing them here on the grill and making sure they're fully cooked. You can totally just fully cook them if you want, but we're gonna finish these in sauce. So what I'm really going for are those char marks, right? That grilly, smoky flavor. All right, now we gotta talk about the curry sauce, the base for our chicken tikka masala, right? The saucy part. Everything here on the board is what's going in. From this side, onions, classic. And I like it a little spicy, so I have these 2 green chilies here that I just sliced down the middle. Kind of lets them release their flavor and spice a little more. That's optional. Of course, we talked about the ginger and garlic paste. This is ghee, clarified butter. You probably know how to make your own. You can also buy this at the store. I have an Indian market nearby, so I picked some up myself. I like having it in the shelf. It's basically a very, very, very strong, buttery tasting butter. Water, cream, tomatoes, salt, good old tomato paste. We have our whole spices here. In most British curry houses, I don't think you'd probably see whole spices in the chicken tikka masala. So, you know, I'm gonna show you how we're gonna use these in a bit. Then we have our spice mix, which is simple. The kasiri chili, little turmeric, garam masala. And then lastly, this ingredient I feel is the most important in this dish, or at least one of them. These are fenugreek leaves, kasiri methi. You know what? If honey was an herb, it would be this. These are the leaves. The seeds are also a big herb that's also heavily used in South Asian cooking too. We're not gonna use them today. You can pick some of those up yourself. This comes together pretty quickly as far as curries go. We're gonna pass the duchy to the medium-low heat. We're gonna go in with a little bit of ghee and our whole spices, which are bay leaf, green cardamom, cloves, cumin seed, and a cinnamon stick. I'm just gonna move these around a little bit until they start to pop a little bit. We're really just trying to infuse this butter with the spices. We're gonna remove the spices. I'm not so worried about the little tiny cumin seeds. Those will be fine. To our spiced ghee situation, I'm gonna add a whole bunch of onions. It's about 3 whole onions diced up. Nice healthy pinch of kosher. Season as we cook, remember, layer that. We're just gonna cook these until they're translucent. They should just start sweating. All right, now we're gonna go in with some of that ginger garlic paste. Just gonna stir that in, cook it for a little bit longer, a couple minute or 2 maybe. Right until we really start to smell those aromatics, right? That garlic, that ginger, it's pungent, it should smell nice. Just kind of cooking off the rawness here. All right, now we're gonna hit our spices and also sneak in a little bit of tomato paste, which is gonna caramelize nicely, add even more depth to an already quite deep dish. All right, now we're gonna hit our tomato puree. Our green chilies, again, that's optional. I'm gonna go with a big pinch of kosher, season that up, and a dash of water. Probably gonna add more later. You're gonna see some of this ghee pooled up over here. It's kind of like, you know, doing its thing. I'm just gonna kind of mix this around now. Beautiful. All right, so I'm gonna cut the heat a little bit there. Just gonna remove our chilies. They've done their part. So right now, we're looking a little lumpy for my liking, but that's about to change. All right, that is looking a lot better there. So I got the heat back on low now. I'm gonna take some of that kasuri methi here and kind of like Mexican oregano, right? Kind of work it through my hands, kind of let my hand warm from the oils in my hand, really kind of pulverize the herb and wake it up. And then I'm just gonna finish it off with a little bit of heavy cream. Look at this, kind of lightens up. Those speckles of green look super nice. Give it that classic curry house look. Beautiful, kind of like oregano and a tomato sauce, right? Now at this point, you could cool this sauce down, bag it up, put it in a deli, freeze it, save it for later, and add whatever you want to it, right? But we are going to add our chicken. Just got our grilled skewers right here. Tikka in. Whatever extra pan drippings there are, don't forget to add those in too. Now we can just mix this around. Oh yeah, baby. Now I'm just gonna let that simmer away on medium heat for about another 5 or 10 minutes.
10 minutes later.
It's pretty wild how like a dish can just kind of like become something completely new when it moves from country to country. There's some of that. God damn. If you like videos like this, comment below what food you'd like to see us do, kind of like a half-breed history and context-y cook-along thing with. God damn. As always, your input is valued. Thanks for watching, guys. If you learned something or liked the video, go ahead and like the video. If you're new to the channel, stick around some, right? We're gonna be doing more stuff like this, so sub to the channel. Best way to support us is over on the Patreon, aka the Grocery Fund, and or the store, AdamWitt.store. Got a lot of really cool shirts with cool designs. Can you see that? Come see what's good on Discord. We're hanging out, we're cooling in there, talking, having good conversations. I do giveaways from time to time, so come introduce yourself, join the community. That is all I got for you this time, so until next, we meet.
Alvida.
This is how you say bye in Hindi. Alvida, right? Kind of sounds like I'll be back. Alvida.
Alvida.
Alvida. Alvida. Classic white guy saying it. Alvida. I got a buddy in college named Alvida.